So what we want to talk to you about is market myopia. We really wanted to open the discussion about the fact that we see that quite a bit of organizations don't have a full view of what is happening on their market, and that they might be taking decisions while they don't have that complete view. And I think starting with this screen is a sort of a symbolic reflection of that. It is like sitting in the car, it's raining outside, you know what you have to do, you know the road where you have to go, and still, not having the full sight might be really hurting your decision making. You don't see everything. Still, you need to take decisions if you want to move ahead. And if you don't move ahead, you might be making mistakes as well. We're looking at this from a viewpoint of strategic market intelligence, and myself, Ingrid, CEO of DataScouts, the company I started 7 years ago together with Jan van Steenland. We have been working a lot on trying to build the tools, the solutions in order to help especially strategic marketeers, market analysts to gather the data that you need in order to understand what is happening in your market. And that is mainly what this presentation will be about. So let's first move a little bit deeper in what is market myopia. What would be the impact of market myopia on a company? As we think that market myopia is sort of an illness, something you don't want to have in your organization, it's so important that there is a roadmap for curing it. So how can you get rid of that thing that is avoiding you of really taking fast decisions and moving ahead? I want to discuss with you 3 different cases on which we have been working, giving you a little bit of a concrete idea of what their problems are, what their needs were, and in very high level as well, how we help them get more clarity about the context in which they were acting. So that's all going into how do we build context clarity. In that part, I will be talking to you a little bit more about our proposition, how we provide answers to context clarity. I'll do a quick wrap up, and then there is Q&A at the end. As we indicated already before, I'm more than happy to hear your questions in the middle, your remarks in the middle. No need to really wait till the full end, but of course at the end there is always some room available to have a conversation with each other. So that's what I want to walk you through during the next 30 to 45 minutes. But let's first start off what is market myopia and trying to give it a definition. For us, when we look at it, it is all about the fact that we see businesses making wrong decisions or not making decisions at all because they're missing some key information about the market in which they are operating. So overall, the view they have, the landscape they see, is often too narrow, or it is very fragmented. Narrow because if you would talk with a company about who their competitors are, they only see competitors as the one that do exactly the same as they are doing. That's of course a definition of a competitor, but often that's not how a consumer would look at it. For a consumer, for a client, all substitutes of what you are offering that are providing the same result might be a competitor. So, I mean, I think the very well-known example, if I go to the zoo in the weekend with the kids, who is a competitor of the zoo in Antwerp? Well, everybody could think of other zoos in the environment, but in the end, it is everything that provides entertainment for a family on a Sunday afternoon. And that's what we really think is, be sure that your view that you have on your market is broad enough. The fragmented side, we'll get back to that later on, often comes to the fact that a lot of information, a lot of knowledge about your market is available within your company, but often it is in the heads or the mailboxes of certain people, and it's not always shared. So that means that everybody looks at their market from their specific viewpoint. So often cases, and that's very funny, when you sit around the table very early on with an organization and you ask the salesperson or an innovation person or a marketing person who their competitors are, you will get completely different viewpoints, because one is mainly looking at Google Analytics and the other is in the field and is talking to a lot of people. So here again, that fragmented viewpoint is very normal. The question is, how do you bring it together? And this is what we want to say, that if you have market myopia, you might not seeing everything, resulting in not understanding completely what is happening on your market, what the dynamics are of the markets, how consumer behavior is shifting, and whether or not technology is disrupting the market in which you're active. So in the end, if you want, market myopia leads to knowledge gaps, to not speaking the same language. And that situation can be very, very difficult for organizations, because it might really hinder your decision making, because you might have a lot of discussion about what's right and what's wrong. That might be slowing down the decision making process, will reducing or even mainly prolonging your time to market, because all innovation efforts you're doing need to go to the market. That's where you really will validate them. If that's not happening, that's problematic. And that might reduce, in the end, your prospect for success in the future. So this is in big lines what for us is market myopia. And that is where we really think it's important that companies are very much aware of it, because we see, from the context that we having with organization, but as well, of course, from what you see happening with organization, everybody really knows very well, is that a lot of organizations are suffering from that fragmented market view, from understanding and knowing the dots, but not seeing how they are interconnected, and how you can really, use these opportunities, these partnerships that are there in order to really realize your own vision, really make sure that you lead the way and you stay in a front runner position as a company. Now, why does that happen? I mean, is it because companies are bad? No, that's not the case. Honestly, we're living in an area, in a time where a lot of changes are happening. I think that's the beauty of being, a professional in 2023. Never dull moment, I would say. But at the same time as well, there is a lot of insecurity. There's a lot of change that is happening. We're living in an environment where technology and technological advancements that have an impact on your business are going at a pace we've never seen before. If you just think of the saga of Sam and OpenAI of the last couple of weeks, honestly, a little bit more than a year ago, we didn't hear about him. We didn't even know it was existing. ChatGPT was just seeing the market. Today, he is, the entrepreneur of the year. He's the business of the year, just, because it's important and enormous which a change a technology can have. That's just one. But there's so much happening on the technology front. At the same time, especially in Europe, but for sure across the whole world, we're more aware of what is happening on a climate or on the environmental side. So there is also a lot of effort going on the sustainability side. And then, of course, as consumers, we're changing as well. There's a lot of discussion about generations Z, about eventually already our generation Alpha. So here we see a new type of consumer standing up, having completely different expectations, having been growing up in a digital area. They've never seen it differently. So they look at the world from a different point of view. And as a business, in the middle of all of this, we need to survive. We need to make a lot of decision and interact with our markets in order to, embrace all these transitions that are happening almost simultaneously and take a point, make a stance. What do you want to be? I've been in a great conversation last week that was linked to sustainable and circular fashion, a European project in which we were involved. And honestly, it was so interesting to see the different standpoints if we talk about fashion of the future, because it's an area in which there's a lot of SMEs, a lot of small, medium-sized companies with their very, very specific challenges, I would say, in really surviving, in getting funding for doing what they're doing. Getting funding for circularity is still not that obvious today, and especially in a fashion environment where there's a huge I would say, a habit of having 4 collections a year. So there is a quite high pace in order to move things forward. And then you have the movement towards zero waste, towards saying, hey, we really need to change the consumer. You don't need to wear something else in winter as you wear in summer. You can wear the same thing the whole year through, isn't it? And we don't need to make differences between gender, between men and women. And in whatever we're doing, we need to be sure as well that companies, suppliers in the south are able to follow. If we think about Bangladesh, if we think about India, so we cannot make Europe afford that wouldn't be accessible anymore for other people. So a lot of elements came up where we just wanted to have a conversation about how can I help an SME be successful in Europe around sustainable and circular fashion. And that's what I wanted to say. The challenges, the opportunities are huge because we're able today to look at it from a holistic point of view. And yeah, I would say our society has become worldwide. We live in a global environment that has a lot of challenges today. And that is what makes it very important for companies to capture all of this, to work with all of this, and to define their own identity, their own mission, their own vision within that changing environment. I'm not going to go into all the discussions that we see here, but the digital transformation, yes, we've gone a whole way. Huh? I think we started, talking and coaching companies in their digital transformation about 10, 15 years ago. I think we've gone a whole way today, but still there's a lot to go. Still, there's a lot of companies that are very at the early stages of this transformation. COVID has pushed us all a long way ahead of that. I just think that all of us are remotely sitting here together from across the world. There is no problem with that. But digital transformation is a given, and it will not stop. We're in the middle of an energy transition. It's directly linked to climate change, so I'm putting them together. But the energy industry, the fossil fuel industry, is seeing a huge disruption. We've all seen it coming. I remember me being in primary school, even I think talking about in 30 years there wouldn't be any oil anymore. Well, here we are. It's high time, and it's very interesting to see the powers that are playing on the market. Just think of the COP28, what happened, in the last couple of days and weeks, how everybody is taking a stance and is thinking about surviving as an organization. Some going the extra miles, other just to make sure that they fund that the situation remains the same. At the same time, and here I think more about a younger target audience that is really thinking and looking at the world and really have the feel that time is running out. We cannot continue doing what we're doing, but the question is, how do you stop? You cannot stop right away and change the whole system. So how do we make the change happen in a fast way, but at the same time as well, make sure that, we still survive this. So I think that's a very huge focus that is happening. I'm not going to go too much about the geopolitical shifts. There's a lot been happening in 2023. It started the year before with the Ukraine and the Russian war, but the whole situation in Palestine, has put some extra focus on it. We feel as well the power plays that are happening between China, the US, Russia. So here again, it will have an influence on choices that businesses will be making. And then the last part is more what I talked about before, the societal changes, the social demographic changes. We can look at it in a positive way, that we're living in a world that is much more inclusive and much more tolerant than it was ever before. And at the same time, the question is it really? Look at the Netherlands just voting for Wilders. Are we really all that more tolerant? We have our own elections coming up in Belgium shortly. Same question here. So yes, there is more tolerance, there is more openness, there is more accessibility, but at the same time, we've never seen so many refugees around the world as we have today, economic and political. So, wow, a lot of things happening. And this is exactly where all of us are in the middle, forced in a way to innovate, forced to embrace those transitions that are happening. And if we look at it, and I don't think for any of you that is an eye-opener, I think we all know, but the success rate of innovation, and I link that a little bit to the success rate of strategy, what is even much harder to really quantify and to put in numbers, is quite low. Let's be very honest there. 1 out of 3 innovation projects is successful. 2 out of 3 are not successful. Although a lot of thinking and a lot of work is going into it, 60% doesn't work. On the startup side, 1 out of 2 doesn't succeed. And here again, these are numbers. I didn't put a source, but they are numbers that are coming out of a PwC research. 1 out of 2, honestly, I think is high. Being very active in the startup scene, I think this is starting from when a company gets incorporated to really becoming a successful company, a scale-up and a mature company. There's even many, many more ideas that never see the sunlight. But that's normal. That's what startup life is about. Now, if we go a little bit deeper into these innovation projects, there's different types of innovation. Huh? It's not all the same, and the success rates are different. If we go into digital transformation, as said, where we started many years ago, really companies have difficult with going through that. Only 30% of these projects are successful. If you look into product innovation, it's around 50%, and process innovation, even 60 to 75% of these processes or process improvements, they succeed. So we see that the more it is about optimization, automation, we can manage that because we have a starting base that we're going to make better, and we're using technologies and really well-defined processes in order to make that work. If we want something to be completely different, if we really want to go beyond incremental innovation up to really disruptions, things become much more difficult. And then I go to the last line, because that is where it really, stresses out a lot of organizations. If you do innovation, it doesn't happen overnight. In average, to bring a new product to life, we take 18 months from having the idea and the go-ahead to do that project to really having the first customers on the projects. It's not yet being a sustainable, product with a lot of use. It takes time. And that means that overall return on investment on the innovation side is approximately 16%. Which isn't that high. So it's normal that many companies, especially in times like today of recession and a bit of an economic downturn, are really wondering whether the high investment in innovation is really going to pay off. So this, in the fact that we're sitting with a lot of transitions that are happening that we cannot say no to, we know that it will take a lot of effort in order to make them succeed. And then if we look into what we believe is one of the core elements, is like, how do you take your decisions? Do you really have all the elements in place to make sure that you can take qualitative and speedy decisions within an environment that is changing? This is a research that has been done by McKinsey, and there we see that only 20% of employees think that their organization is good at taking decisions. Okay, fine. That's not a lot, but there's a lot of bias in here. So let's go to the executive, the really part of the decision making. They spend nearly 40% of their time on decision making, so that they really sit down. They're not just talking and doing interviews, whatever. They're really thinking about what's the next step. What are we going to do with things? 40%. 48% of them thinks that they are fast in taking decisions. It's almost half that think it's fast. The other half thinks, let's take the time. We need to take good decisions. But still, 61% of them thinks that half of the time that they're spending on decision making is not effective at all. So what you feel here is that, yes, we all know that decision making is important. Decisions you make or don't make, they will propel you forward. So it's important to know what you're doing. Still, a lot of organizations are struggling with that. And that's what we call really market myopia. So I hope that, you see a little bit where we are coming from when we talk about market myopia. Don't know if there's already some first thoughts you want to share, some first feedback that you have on this definition of market myopia. Okay. Well, if you agree on what market myopia is, this fragmented, narrow view of what is happening in the market, let's then look further in what are, what does it mean for a company? And let's start with the symptoms. How can you recognize that your company is eventually not having very much a complete view on what is happening in your market? These are the things we see coming back. Missing targets. You really want to do something. You think you have everything in place. Your project plan is made. Everybody seems to be aligned. But hey, one after the other, you're not reaching your targets. Not reaching your targets in terms of sales. Not reaching your targets in time of market. Every project is more expensive than you ever thought before. Well, that's not making people happier, but missing targets one after the other is a clear symptom of market myopia. And often that's because, and you heard me say it, these targets are very quantified. We have all learned to work with SMART targets. So we put numbers on it. But often it's the quality of the insights and the quality of the targets we want to reach that we are overlooking. And that's so hard as well to quantify again. But that's often what we see happening. At the same time as well, there is a resistance to change. And let's be honest, as human beings, we don't like change. Don't fix what is not broken. So we're used of doing the way we have been doing them. Let's be honest as well, in this world of digital transformation, companies, employees are faced with one new tool after the other. And they're wondering them, is this the tool that's going to stay? So perhaps I don't engage now. Let's wait for 6 months to a year. If it's still around, I might start using it. And damn it, that is so painful, because exactly that reaction is making that those new opportunities, those new tools, those new processes are not going to get the adoption they deserve. So this reluctance to adopt in the end is as well a sign that people don't see those market signals to understand that it is high time to change. So that's another point we see that is happening. Another symptom is just late reactions. You see things changing, it is happening, but you're not yet going to take action now. We see a protein shift happening. We see that we need to move, to zero carbon solutions. But hey, legislation is not yet there. We will not yet be punished. So let's wait another bit of months. Again, I think it's a classic symptom of market myopia, that but you don't see the full impact, and you don't take that into account in your decision making. If we go one deeper further, what I feel very much, and I really want to stress this, is the value proposition. I think I see a lot of organizations around me that adapt their value proposition to the demand of the last customer they've been talking to. So who are you? Who do you want to be in this changing environment? And how are you going to protect your value proposition? I think that's what the question is here very much. And if you're not careful and you're hopping from, the latest hype or the latest requests all the time, you might really see a growing gap between what your company offers and what consumers really want. So I think this, thinking about who you are, about your own value proposition is a really important one, and not having it inconsistently shifting all the time. And this leads in the end to hesitant decision making, because if you are missing your targets, if you don't like change, and you mainly don't know really who you are, it becomes very, very hard to be fast in your decision-making process. So companies that are hesitant, are late in decision-making, often that's as well another symptom of market myopia. And we've talked about already a couple of, what are the symptoms and why are they there? Often it has to do with siloed data, with data and knowledge that is available in the organization, as said, that is available in different tools that we're using, but they're not connected. There's silos between departments, there's silos between tools, there's silos between companies and other companies. And that makes it really, really hard to get a complete integrated view. It's linked often to using old tools. again, this not wanting to accept the change and the time, the effort that is related to it. So often companies are still using outdated tools, and that makes them become more and more inefficient because the data remains where it is and it is not integrated. And it is not, using and leveraging the new technological opportunities, capabilities that are existing. And as said, it is immediately linked to the fact that as a human being, we don't like change. So we rather stay static and continue the things as we've learned them to do, instead of saying, whoa, something is happening here and I need to adapt. All of this leads to knowledge gaps. And one that I would like to add to that, especially in the world we have been seeing after COVID, with a lot of people changing jobs or getting out of the traditional doing business, looking more for impact businesses. That makes it also very hard for companies to sort of, I would say, harness that information that is there, make sure that you integrate it within your company to make sure it is not depending of the one person that is working on it, but that essential information and insight is part of your business and your business processes. A couple of weeks ago, I talked to a company here in Belgium, a quite big one, raised a lot of money. But they were faced with the fact that their head of sales was leaving the company. And that was the person who always prepared the slides on competitive intelligence for the board. So they came to me 2 weeks for the next board meeting and said, Ingrid, we have a problem. We need to make an update of the competitive analysis and we don't have it anymore. Could you guys help? And I was a bit shocked because, I would expect a company to be able to reconstruct that quite quickly. So, but that's, I think, that very good example how you can have it one moment and a few weeks later, it might have been gone just due to the fact that people in your organization are rotating. And then indeed, the other part that we see as well that is causing market myopia is that it's a bit this resistance to change, but it is as well eventually the old school thought that whenever you do research, it needs to be compatible with the numbers and the figures that you have been looking at last year, because how can you otherwise see that shift is happening? And that's a bit problematic because if year after year, for 10 years, for 15 years, you're asking the same questions to your customers or to your market, you might be missing exactly there where the changes are. So having really a good view on where do I need to get, to make sure that there is backward compatibility, to make sure that what I'm asking today, I compare it with the years ahead or before. It is also so important to, go beyond what and really dare and ask for the things you're not aware of today, because that might be exactly these early alerts, these signals that you need in order to move ahead and get a more complete view. So this is mainly what we see are the root causes of market myopia. And you hear me coming, it's a lot about data and turning this data into insights and mainly collective intelligence. So the results of not having that overview, of having that fragmented view, is mainly resulting in a declining market share. We're losing market share. Competitors are moving faster. New entrants are taking over. Painful. So we're losing revenues. It's really hard if you lose your competitiveness, if you're losing market share, to eventually, stick to the high prices that you're asking for, to really be sure that you're seen still as the front runner in the market. So really important, and it really gets painful when you get to this point where you really feel like, the things that you have been building over the many years are slipping away. Often it is linked to a reduced customer satisfaction because the customer has the feeling that you're not listening to him for a long time. You come back with your questionnaires, you have all the kind of advisory boards, but still customer doesn't see that you're adapting to the adapting world he's active in. And all of that leads in the end then as well to missed opportunities. There are a lot of opportunities, they're always been there, but if you don't see them, if you don't grab them because you don't deem they're important now, because that's not what is in your survey, you're losing it. And in the end as well, what we see here is that in your go-to-market strategy, it feels like fragmented. You know, you're sticking to the past. You're trying to clamp to what you have been building up in the past, and you overlook mainly the new signals that are there. So it doesn't fit what you're trying to bring to the market and the way you feel that your customers, the market, is reacting to it. And then, of course, the question is, what is the real cost? I have been talking financially about the fact that we miss revenue streams. And mainly it comes down to wasting resources. If there's only, 1 out of 3 innovation projects that succeeded, that means that 2 out of 3 didn't succeed. That is effort, that is people time, that's eventually investment in new materials and infrastructure that's going down the drain. So financially speaking, it's not only the top line where we're missing, it's mainly the bottom line that is worse, because we have been investing in new avenues that will not materialize. Of course, we all know that's part of innovation. So we will never succeed in not having any failure, because without failure, we cannot learn and we cannot innovate. The question is just, how can we do it faster and cheaper? I think that's what we're looking at. Then the other one, strategically, we feel as well that if your vision is really narrowed, if you are not listening to the signals that are there out in the market, you might just trying to catch up and stick to the success that you have had in the past. And that might mean that you're losing your front runner position that you had, because you're not leading the change anymore. You're just trying to stick to the success that you had in the past. So it means you become reactive. You're not proactive. You're not the one that is the front runner that leads that change and that is inspiring people around you. So strategically, you're not the one that people look at in order to be part of the future. And then last but not least, operationally, we've seen what Market Myopia is doing. We see that there's knowledge gap. We see a lot of people that might be not willing to accept changes that are happening. So more and more we will see that if people are not aligned in the team, the teams start doing their own thing, that they start interpreting their own data sources, insights, and just stick together. And I think that you all know that, but there is nothing so inspiring as having, an enemy. The worst thing that you can have is an enemy that is inside your own company and you're having those internal fights. So in the end, Market Myopia, if it really leads to a company that gets more and more slow, and not leading the change, you might see that as well in your teams and in the processes that become more and more inefficient. So the real cost of Market Myopia can be really high on the top line, on the bottom line, and for the long term, not being ready to gather that change. So we talked about Market Myopia. We have a definition. We know what it is. We understand how we can recognize Market Myopia, where it is coming from. So now the question is like, how are we curing it? How do we make sure as a company that we can cure market myopia? And it sounds very easy. It's all, according to us, to getting clarity about the context in which you are operating. Because every decision you make, if you know where you're going, if you have a very clear vision, where you want to be, where you want to go, ahead of you, not behind you, but ahead of you, every decision you make will propel you forward or hold you back. But a decision made is the most important one. The more mindful you take your decisions, the more responsible you take your decisions, the better your organization will react to it. And that's what we strongly believe, that if you achieve that really good understanding, accurate, timely understanding of the dynamics in your market, you will make sure that all that fragmented information is really getting together into a cohesive whole. It's important to accept there is fragmented information, that everybody has his own view. The real thing is, how do you bring that together into collective intelligence so that the whole context gets a 360-degree view and everybody can really act on the full picture. That's, according to us, the way you can make as an organization better decisions, make them faster and more effective if you want. And that is how we believe that you can gain context clarity. I said it before, by building collective intelligence, bring your team together, foster unity, and make sure that everybody knows what's the direction, what's the goal, what are we working to, what's the vision we want to adhere to. So try to go away of that fragmented view. Let's make sure there is that cohesion and that collective understanding that is shared amongst all team members. Understand the dynamics of the market. The market is changing. There's a lot of things happening. So it's not enough just to read newsletters, to set up a Google alert or to ChatGPT something. I mean, that's all great tools and you really need that. But if you want your team to be aligned, if you really want to get context clarity within your market intelligence process, it is so important to foresee dialogue, to really challenge what we're seeing, to have these conversations with each other so that we can really decode what is happening. Everybody's point of view is a point of view, but it only becomes really valuable if it becomes integrated. And mainly by having those robust data sets, by having alignment on what we're seeing is happening in the market, that is where decisions can be made that are aligned both with the goals that you have as a company and that what is happening in the market. And you understand that once all of this is clear, whatever happens in the market, accepting the uncertainties that are there, that is where you are ready as an organization to react and to mitigate risks, because you have been playing to these scenarios of the future. And you really understand that when something is happening, there's different ways of reacting. And the more you have thought about those risks, the more you are prepared for those risks to happen, the faster you will be in taking a decision to act or just to wait. So that is mainly the results that context clarity can bring you, is don't just react, but really have a strategic plan forward and to make sure that you can go ahead, you stay ahead of the curve and you can react whatever is happening. I love to, compare that like with, I don't know if any of you loves the whole cycling business, huh? As Belgians, we're all good at that. But if you really want to win in sports anyhow, it's not only about you being good, about you being well prepared. It's making sure as well you understand your competitors and you understand that at certain parts of the trajectory, when something is happening, whether or not you need to jump into the wheel of the one that is in front of you, or if you just let him go because that is just like a hype, a fate, whatever, he will not make it. So really understanding the road you want to take, the roadmap that you have ahead of you, but as well, the players with whom you're playing is really, really important. And that is your strategic path ahead. Not only the path, but as well, like what could happen, the uncertainties, the eventualities, and how you would react to that one. And this is mainly where it comes to streamlining your decision-making processes, being faster, but as well being more agile as a business. That is what we really want to achieve by focusing on getting clarity about the context, so that there is really a roadmap to more a long-term success, and to see and tap into new opportunities as they arise. So I think in big lines, anticipates the shifts. That was what I was saying before. When you better understand the landscape, if you better understand the dynamics of the market, the players that are on there, the capabilities they have, you will be able as early as possible to anticipate the shift because you see the early signals, so you can react earlier. That makes that you can boost your chances for success, because if your decisions that you're taking are aligned with the goals that you have as a company and they are aligned with the dynamics in the market, that should allow you to reduce missteps, to avoid investing in projects that will not be working. So that will secure higher return on investment and in the end a higher rate of success. The nice thing is that if you make that work, that you stay ahead of the curve. So that makes that just like the whole position that you have as a company, the whole atmosphere that is there, the people that you're attracting, the customers that you're working with will allow you as well to stay ahead of the curve, to really move faster. And that's only possible by building that unified vision. So this is where we move, if you want, from market myopia to context clarity. And let me try in the next few slides to take a couple of use cases in order to make things a little bit clearer to you. I see that we're moving into the 45 minutes mark, so I'm trying to perhaps move a little bit faster and wrap things up. If you have questions, as said, don't hesitate to ask them. A few examples of companies with whom we are working, without calling out the names, because of course these are very strategic trajectories we have that we're working on. But here we're talking about a food company that's based in Europe, and that really has to make a decision whether or not to invest in the vegan cheese category. Investing in vegan cheese, multiple reasons for that. The market is changing. There's more and more people that avoid eating meat, reduce eating meat, and are looking for alternatives. The vegan product categories has been booming for sure. It's been a bit plateauing because people get a little bit tired of the fact that there is not sufficient choice, that it doesn't smell nice, the texture is not okay. So a lot of reasons why on the consumer side there is an interest, but it's not really going fast. Secondly, the move to vegan cheese is often as well driven by sustainability targets, because it would impact enormously your scope 3 results, if you want, if you could reduce or change a fraction of meat by a vegan alternative. And then the question is, are you going to produce yourself, or are you going to partner up with somebody who could do it? There's a lot of parties out there. The customer would nicely call it sometimes like a lot of people are trying or mixing things together, and that results in a sort of a cheesy thing. And that's really, what it really is. So they have been looking really in understanding, is it the right time to invest in our own vegan cheese production line facilities? Do we do it together with other parties? With whom would we be doing it? And how do we make sure, if we make this huge investment, that it is an investment for the future, and that in an environment that is changing a lot? Today we might be talking about precision formulation. Tomorrow we might be talking about precision fermentation. So what's the future is a huge and important thing. And here as DataScouts, we've been helping them a lot to really understand, like, what is the maturity of the market in terms of vegan cheese? Who is producing vegan cheese today? Are these all very artisanal, very small sized producers? Or do we really see a shift towards larger production facilities? And then who are their customers who are really driving this? So we've been looking into the value chain, and if you want, the ecosystem around it, because a lot of innovation is happening. Some investors are really very active in this scene as well. So we have been giving that customer a lot of context clarity that is now with the board, and hopefully will help them drive some decisions towards 2024, moving ahead in a market that is changing very, very rapidly. A completely other question that came to us. We have a company that is specialized in the field of engineering, energy, and infrastructure. There's not so many, so you might be able to guess this one. But still, they have noticed, and here I'm talking about 2 years ago already, that they were not the preferred partner for many of the green hydrogen projects that were being put in place. So they felt like, hey, we are missing one opportunity after the other. We are out there, our sales force has that as a priority. We know how much numbers we need to realize, but we are not getting them. What is happening? What's going wrong? And that's where we started really mapping for them I would say the decision flow, the decision that is leading towards the implementation of a green hydrogen project, and how it was intertwined step after step in order to get to being the party that would be really building and maintaining the facilities. So I think here, we have gotten very positive feedback. Although they are very active on the market, they misinterpreted like the processes that were happening in order to build a consortia. And today, luckily, the tide has been changing for them, and they have been winning quite a few very interesting projects. So we talked about food and a production decision. We talked about really sales and business development and not missing business opportunities. Here we're at the other side of the world. We're working with a dairy company in New Zealand that, although perhaps New Zealand is not today a front runner on everything that has to do with sustainability, but due to their businesses that they're doing with Europe, it's really, really important as well that they start working on greenhouse gas emissions, mitigating them, reducing them as much as they can. Now, as we all know, New Zealand is a country with a lot of cattle, a lot of animals that are not housed but running around on the field. So how do you how do you go about reducing methane emission of cows, sheep, if you want, without having a real effect on the meat and the milk production of this cattle. And here what we've mainly been doing for them is providing them some clarity by mapping the academic landscape, who are the different academic institutions that are very actively working on this biotech, agri-tech environment, but as well giving them a global overview of the agri-tech solution providers. And not only this is the vaccine that you have to use, but these are mainly the components that if you bring them together, there could be a very interesting solution for your animals and for your farmers. So you see very different questions, often very much linked to a change that is happening in an industry, an innovation that is happening and is not, fitting into the normal processes that people are working with. Why do I call this market myopia? Because you would expect these companies to know, because these organizations, that's their core business. But sometimes because their view is too narrowed, because they're working together all the time with the same partners with whom they have used to work, and there might be a lot of prejudices why you would change or look for something else. That is where market myopia comes to place, and that is why decision making becomes so slow. And that is why indeed, like, opening up that view, going broader and looking what is happening around you is so important. So let me use those use cases to provide you some insights about how we as DataScouts would help you deliver context clarity. First of all, we believe that we live in a world where, yes, you can do market research the way we've been doing that for the last, I would say, 80 to 120 years. Luckily, we have found Google a few years ago that helped us search the internet faster. Still, it still is for many organizations and many people a very tedious work. So we strongly believe that AI can help you handle the grunt work, make that an analyst can really gather data faster and spend more of the time on the interpretation and the formulation of the strategy. So use AI-powered insights is part number one. Secondly, as we've been claiming before, integrate market analysis, get to a global, holistic market perspective, try to go out of the box. That's the nice thing of automating things, of using AI, that you can look broader. You can look at the things that you thought originally eventually wouldn't be the solution. But just by letting different options collide, I would say sometimes that's where the best solutions are coming from. We aim always to go one step deeper than just staying at a very high strategic level. We really want to understand who is the solution provider, who is my competitor, not just having a box of all companies with more than 500 employees that are based in the Benelux. We don't believe that is the right answer. We really try to put names to a company, try to put faces to a company so that we really understand who they are. And then last but not least, we strongly believe that scenario thinking is what it requires to really think about the future, about what are the potential scenarios of the futures, the opportunities and the risks, in order to equip yourself with what's next. I might not go through the full market research methodology, but that's the way we love to work. Scope the problem or scope the research. Start exploring really in a very iterative way. Start exploring the stakeholders, do a pestle trend analysis, and understand the key market forces so that you can really synthesize that information into how mature is the market, how healthy is the ecosystem, and what are the blind spots, the things that we're not having sufficient information about in order to really take decisions. You know, if you do this very well and in an iterative way, eventually going from a very broad scope to deep dives, that is where you can prepare for action. That's where you understand what the future scenarios are, what your hotspots are, and what your blind spots are, how you can measure really how you are changing, how you could take action, how you could have an impact on a changing market, and how you can monitor success. So we start from diverging to generate insights to converging to drive action. That's really how the whole, you know, the full-blown market research methodology of DataScouts is put in place. And mainly, I invite you, we will share with you the presentation. I invite you to look at this presentation of Shell. As most of you will know, in the 70s, they started to develop the scenario building methodology. And that is exactly, from where we start to fill in a gap that we feel there is still today in the market, this lack of a full understanding of the dynamics of the market. So I'm not going to play it now. I really invite you to look at it. It's very inspiring. But then we started building a tooling around it, because I think when I look at Shell and when I look at the scenario mapping exercises, we really feel that it's not fast enough. Although there's a lot of decisions to make, a lot of scenarios to think about, we really felt that, with today's capabilities, and that's the Minerva tooling we have been building, we really structurally want to help enable market intelligence, leveraging data and in AI to move things ahead. So in our tooling, and here I invite you eventually to a more dedicated product presentation, we have reflected our research workflow. We provide research templates. We allow to ingest data from many, many, many different data sources. And the last but not least, we provide the analyst tools in order to synthesize all the information, all the proof points that he has been gathering in order to prepare for strategic decision making, to share that with the decision makers within the organization in order to move forward and without losing themselves in the detailed analysis of the market. What is really important in our iterative research flow, we always start from the key assumptions. If we don't know what we're looking for, it's very hard to find it. So defining the scope of a research is for us something that is very critical, but at the same time, it's an iterative process. As you move ahead in your analysis, as your market changes over time, it is really important as well to adapt your assumptions. We use a lot of generative AI to support this process of developing your key assumptions, of developing your scope, of generating a list of stakeholders, and of helping you understand what are the keywords that are really at play in here. The key assumption helps us as well to pull in the right information about actors, news stories, in order to build the insights that we want to know. The research templates, as said before, they are pre-designed frameworks. They guide the researcher in collecting, analyzing, and presenting data. The main key templates that we use today are the stakeholder mapping, the one that you see on the left, the key trends. So we're really pulling in a lot of information that we automatically split into political, economical, societal, technological, environmental, and legal aspects. So doing your pestle analysis becomes a lot faster. And then based upon the actors that we have been naming, that we know that are active in the different segments, we we can really understand what are the forces that are at play in your industry, and how are those different segments, those different users playing together, who's really taking which role. In order to do this, in order to really provide that insights, there's a lot of data that we're gathering. That's all happening in the background, but we try on the fly to build 360-degree company profiles, gathering structured, unstructured data from a variety of data sources. Can be company directories, can be funding directories, project details, patent databases, combined with scraping and prompting in order to really get to a use case specific insights and profiles. We're aggregating news from 70,000 different news sources. Here again, based upon what you're looking for on the key assumptions, we will not overload you with a stream of content that is provided by those 70,000 news sources, but we will make sure that the news you see is linked to the project scope, the key assumptions, and the stakeholder mapping. And in the end, we all do this in order to gather signals. So we're monitoring these actors and the relevant news to identify as early as possible signals about mergers and acquisitions, about strategic partnerships, about strategic funding for projects, grants, and so forth. So out of these relationships, we believe that we can really help you understand how the market is evolving. And then last but not least, in order to come to collective intelligence, as the analyst is going through all this information, it's very easy to define the proof points against the assumptions that were defined in the beginning. So while you're reading, you can highlight, comment, annotate the data that you're seeing. You can aggregate very easily all those proof points into a snapshot, which is mainly an auto-generated summary of all the information that you've been gathering, and you can share that via the platform with all, the decision makers, the project members, the people with whom you're working on a certain project. So it's really aiming to build and to share that information in one way, in a very streamlined way. So that's in a nutshell who we are as a company. We aim to simplify the groundwork of market research, and we hope like this to help the market analyst to have more time to think creatively, to think strategically about the opportunities, and to support his management with right decision making. We've come to the hour. I will conclude it here. When you get our presentation, you will see that there is a self-assessment to check the symptoms of market myopia. I would say we're not going to go through it together. You can read them. The more of those questions you answer with a yes, the more that your company is suffering from market myopia, and the more important it is to really start building context clarity in order for you to compete better, to spot new business opportunities, to improve your decision making, and to make sure that you have a long-term business success. I'm going to wrap up here. I thank you very much for being here, and I open the floor for any questions, answers, remarks, suggestions that you might have.
First of all, thank you, Ingrid, for a very in-deep story on market myopia. I heard a lot of triggers for me that I'll definitely take up with Tom in our ongoing conversations.
Great.
But one question maybe. Is there a sweet spot of companies that this solution would work for best? Because you would think that larger corporates with their business intelligence solutions would at least have some inclination of their market developments. But how do you see your solution fit into what they already might have in place versus the stuff that you are bringing to the market?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, Victor. What we have seen happening over the last couple of years is that indeed the sweet spot for us are the larger companies. I would not automatically say it are the multinationals like a P&G. I mean, it's a customer of ours as well, but it's a huge, it's a huge organization with a lot of processes. So implementing a tool as ours takes a lot of time. So the sweet spot for us are often companies that are international, multinational, but with a very strong headquarters that has indeed that capability of doing market intelligence and building it. Often, however, what we see is, yes, they have tools, but they're all struggling because none of these tools is giving them the efficiency that they need. They really feel very much that they're missing out on a lot of things. They get bombarded by management, people that go to conferences with information that they seem to be missing. And that's as well where we believe that the sweet spot is really those larger companies that are investing in innovation and that have their own market intelligence team. That is really where the sweet spot is. Because if you're all outsourcing it to consultants, I think people get very much use of getting reports that are pre-made. So here we feel that a transition has to be made. But it's for sure not the small startup around the corner. They need to focus, they know what they're doing. But it's often the companies that really feel like if they're not acting, they might be losing the position they have today. And then I think the other thing is linked to where transition is really pushing them to go. I mean, if you look in where the guidelines around sustainability are going to hit very fast, larger companies have to be reporting on their sustainability goals as of next year. That will be rolled out as we move ahead. So that is where a lot of need is today to think beyond the normal.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a nice. Some of the trigger words that stick to me are the holistic view, the system thinking, the synthesis.
Yeah.
It all points to helping companies look at a larger picture than just the data or just the reporting, and they need to look more and more outside. I've also remembered on seeing around the corners from Rita McGrath. If you listen to weak signals or the stuff that's underneath there somewhere, but you just can't really grasp it at the moment.
And that's fine, because it takes a time before this inflection moment is happening and it really becomes a problem. But yeah, the earlier you start being aware that these signals are there, the earlier your organization can start thinking about it and start preparing for it. And I think it's what you say is this holistic thinking and that systemic thinking that is so important. But there, at the same time, there's a little bit the risk of going too broad. And I think that is all the time where the balance needs to be between focus, and I mean, in the end, we want to go to action. And I think that's what we always try to do in our projects and our conversation with customers. It's not analysis for the sake of analysis.
Mm-hmm.
We will not be able to predict the future. It will never be what we think today it will be. But if you chunk it down in bits and pieces and you look at it regularly and you grow awareness, we believe that that's the right way moving forward.
Yeah. I think the assumptions might really help in putting the borders around what you're looking at, basically, before you think, I have to analyze the world. No, you just have to analyze.
But it is the hardest, Victor, because everybody is used to go to Google to put in a word and to get 1 million of answers. That's the feeling everybody has. Yeah. But you're right. The assumptions are key. Yeah. Good. I hope it was not too long. Time took me longer than I thought it would be, but a lot to say.